Picture this. You are at a state dinner in the heart of the Roman Empire, 39 AD. You are a senator. The air is thick with wine and fear. The Emperor Caligula rises. He does not speak. He walks the table, not to greet his guests, but to inspect their wives. He stops at your table. He lifts your wife's chin, checks her teeth, feels her arms, as if assessing livestock. You are frozen. You must smile. He points. Guards seize her and drag her from the hall. You remain, smiling. An hour later, the emperor returns, the woman in tow. He sits, takes a drink, and loudly begins a vulgar, detailed critique of her body and her performance in his bed. He does this while looking directly at you. This is not madness. This is a lecture in power. When Gaius Caesar, nicknamed Caligula, ascended to the throne in 37 AD, Rome rejoiced. They saw the son of a beloved war hero. They expected a golden age. What they received was a 4-year masterclass in psychological vivisection. The historical record from chroniclers like Suetonius and Cassius Dio is not a simple catalogue of lunacy. It is the blueprint of a calculated strategy. It is the story of how one man used his darkest sexual desires as a precision weapon to systematically deconstruct and humiliate the most powerful elite in the world. This was not random impulse. It was an architecture of erasure. His strategy began with the first and most sacred pillar of Roman society, the domus, the family. To a Roman, honor was not personal, it was dynastic. And so Caligula began by demolishing his own. Ancient historians report his incestuous relationships with all 3 of his sisters, but his obsession was Drusilla. This was not a hidden affair, it was a public performance. At state banquets, he seated her in the place of the empress, openly caressing her, forcing Rome's elite to bear witness. He flaunted his perversion as a direct challenge to Roman morality. The why was not mere lust, it was a test. When she died, he forced the Senate to declare her a goddess. He made the most powerful men in the world kneel and pray to the partner in his own incest, making them accomplices. He had erased his own family's honor, and now he was coming for theirs. The second layer of his cruelty was the political castration of the Senate. The dinner party inspections were just the beginning. His desire was not simply to take, it was to own and profit from their shame. This led to his most infamous act, the Imperial Palace brothel. He transformed a wing of the sacred Imperial Palace, the very heart of Roman authority, into a state-run brothel. The women forced to work there, the freeborn wives and daughters of the aristocracy. Caligula became the empire's pimp-in-chief, but he wasn't just its pimp, he was its accountant. Suetonius observes that Caligula meticulously recorded the brothel's income, creating a ledger of his clients' names and the prices paid. The why of this is even more chilling. It transformed sexual lust into an administrative humiliation. He was reducing the Roman aristocracy to a mere entry in his accounting books. The third layer of his cruelty was the spectacle of impulse. The why was to make power pathologically unpredictable. A now infamous incident was the wedding of Gaius Piso. Caligula was an invited guest. He saw the new bride, Livia Orestella, and was overcome with a sudden desire to possess her. He didn't wait. He stopped the ceremony, seized the bride from her husband, and married her himself, right then and there. The next day, he divorced and banished her, as one would discard a new toy. It was a raw demonstration that no vow, no bond, no moment of private joy was safe from his momentary desire. The fourth layer was identity erasure, stripping men of their very social definition. During the gladiatorial games, he didn't just watch the spectacle, he created his own. Cassius Dio describes how Caligula would force aristocratic senators and their noble wives into the arena, compelling them to perform humiliating sexual acts, not just for his own pleasure, but for the jeering common crowd. To turn a senator, a figure of authority, into a debased performer was a fate worse than death. It was the ultimate humiliation, erasing their identity and reducing them to objects. But the fifth layer was a deeply hidden weapon, one often obscured by the more public scandals: the political use of homosexual assault. His desire was not indiscriminate, it was targeted. Suetonius reports that Caligula would target high-ranking consular senators. powerful, older men and have them brought to him. The goal was not pleasure, it was the ultimate degradation. In a society built on Roman virtues, masculine virtue, this act was a complete psychological annihilation. He would then boast of the encounters, describing his victims in graphic detail. This was his most secret and effective punishment, a silent, personal terror that left no public mark but permanently broke the will of his rivals. The final, thematic inevitability of the tyrant is to challenge the gods. This became his sixth layer, sacrilege. Breaking mortals was no longer enough. After declaring himself a living god, Caligula sought a new weapon. His targets were the Vestal virgins. These priestesses were the living symbols of Rome's purity, sworn to 30 years of absolute chastity. To touch a Vestal was a sacrilege punishable by a horrific death. For Caligula, their sacred vow was the ultimate invitation. Historians allege he summoned these virgins to his chambers and violated them one by one. He didn't just break their vows, he shattered the very soul of Rome. The analysis is clear. By proving that not even Rome's most sacred symbols were safe from his desire, he was proving his dominance over the divine itself. For 4 years, Rome endured. A network of spies and the brutal loyalty of the Praetorian Guard meant that a whisper of criticism was a death sentence. But a regime built on the systematic humiliation of others will, ironically, be undone by it. The climax was not a popular revolt. It was a conspiracy from within. The man who led the assassins was an officer of Caligula's own guard, Cassius Chaerea. Chaerea was a tough, respected soldier, and Caligula relentlessly publicly mocked him for having a high-pitched voice. It was this small, daily, petty punishment, this ironic human moment, that finally broke the camel's back. The man who had institutionalized incest, state-run prostitution, and public sacrilege was brought down by an insult. In January of 41 AD, Chaerea and his co-conspirators cornered Caligula in a private corridor. The living god died screaming on the marble floor, stabbed over 30 times. Picture this: Syria, 218 AD. A 14-year-old boy, dressed in fine silks and jewels, dances in a frenzy. He is the high priest of a foreign sun god, Elagabalus. He is beautiful, androgynous, and utterly divine to his followers. Now picture this same boy, just months later, entering Rome as its new emperor. The Roman legions, tired of the previous ruler, have handed him the world. They believe they are getting a new dynasty. What they are about to receive is a 4-year revolution, a calculated theological and sexual assault on the very soul of Rome. This is the story of Elagabalus, and it is not a story of teenage madness. It is the story of a theocratic fanatic. Where Caligula used cruelty to dominate the Roman elite, Elagabalus used it to erase them. The historical record, from eyewitnesses like the senator Cassius Dio, is not a catalogue of impulse. It is the blueprint for a calculated strategy of systematic desecration. This was a war against Roman identity itself, waged with the weapons of religious sacrilege and pathological desire. The first layer of his assault was the erasure of Roman virility. To a Roman, virtus, masculine virtue and strength, was the bedrock of the empire. The emperor was its ultimate symbol. Elagabalus decided to annihilate that symbol. He did not just use a brothel as Caligula had, he became the brothel. The historian Cassius Dio, a horrified senator who saw it firsthand, describes how Elagabalus would paint his eyes, wear wigs, and stand naked in the doorways of the imperial palace, soliciting customers. He would negotiate his price and boast of his earnings to his inner circle. The why is chilling. This was not mere lust. It was a performance of psychological castration. By making the pater patriae, the father of the country, a public prostitute, he was reducing all of Rome to the level of a client, forcing them to participate in their own symbolic humiliation. The second layer was the erasure of gender, a direct assault on the Roman power structure. Elagabalus took a charioteer, a low-status slave named Hierocles, as his husband. He publicly referred to this man as his master. This was not a modern exploration of identity. In the rigid Roman hierarchy, it was the ultimate horrifying reversal. The imperator, the supreme commander, was willingly, performatively, becoming the ancilla, the slave girl. He reportedly offered vast sums of money to any physician who could surgically give him female genitalia. The why was a political statement. He was showing the world that he was above Roman definitions of power, above gender, and that their master was, in fact, his slave. The final, thematic inevitability of his reign was the erasure of the gods. Caligula had challenged the Vestals, but Elagabalus went further. He sought to replace the gods. He brought his Syrian sun deity, Elagabal, to Rome, and declared him the new supreme god above Jupiter. Then he committed his most terrifying act of sacrilege. He entered the sacred temple of Vesta, a place forbidden to all men, and stole the Palladium, the most ancient holy object in Rome. He then declared a divine marriage. He forcibly married his sun god to Vesta, the symbol of Roman purity. The why was the final move in his revolution. By symbolically defiling Rome's purest idol, he was declaring Roman tradition to be over, consumed and replaced by his own divine, perverse order. The climax, when it came, was not a political assassination. It was an extermination. The Praetorian Guard, the very men sworn to protect him, finally revolted, driven to madness by his daily desecrations. They hunted the 18-year-old emperor through the palace. He was found hiding in a palace latrine. The living god, the Sun King, was dragged from a toilet. The ironic human moment was his final plea. He was found clinging to his mother, and the enraged soldiers killed them both. Their bodies were dragged through the streets of Rome. And the body of Elagabalus, the body that had defiled the palace, the Senate, and the gods, was thrown into the Tiber River. The city he tried to erase, in the end, erased him with its own purifying water. The story of Elagabalus is an enduring warning, but of a different kind. Caligula shows us the sadism of absolute power. Elagabalus shows us the terrifying fragility of culture. He is a testament to the fact that a society's most sacred traditions, its identity, its very soul, can be deconstructed and annihilated not by an invading army, but by a single pathological narcissistic will at the absolute center of power. It forces us to ask how much of our own identity is truly solid and how much is just a shared story, a story that one divine madman could rewrite. We believe in exhuming these uncomfortable truths not for sensation, but for understanding. If you believe this hidden history is worth telling, subscribe for the stories you were never meant to know.